Are you familiar with the ICC arrest warrant being that was issued against Putin?
Yes.
Do you think that's sound?
I think we've all seen, Senator, the atrocities and war crimes committed in Ukraine. We believe strongly, as we said from
I think
the outset,
the president said he thought that was a sound approach.
There needs to be accountability.
Yeah. If Putin came to the United States for whatever reason, would we turn him over to the ICC?
Well, I can't get ahead of that because obviously I have to look at the laws and rules. As you know, we're not actually a party to the ICC, so I don't want to engage in that hypothetical. But
I would encourage you that if he came here, we should turn him over.
Now, I don't think he has any plans to travel here soon.
Yeah. Well, would you encourage our European allies to turn him over?
I think that anyone who is a party to the court and has obligations should fulfill their obligations.
This is my first video update from Athens, Greece on this Thursday afternoon. Let's talk about some news. And that was the discussion between Senator Lindsey Graham and U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. And Lindsey Graham, he wanted to know if the U.S. would arrest Russian President Vladimir Putin. This goes back to the ICC arrest warrant, the Hague's arrest warrant for Putin. And Lindsey Graham also asked Blinken if the U.S. wouldn't arrest Putin if he were, hypothetically speaking, if he were to travel to the U.S. If the U.S. can't get to Putin, what about the European allies? What about if Putin were to travel to Europe? Can Blinken get the EU allies to arrest Putin and take him to The Hague? And actually, this hypothetical question statement that Lindsey Graham throws at U.S. Secretary of State Blinken has already been answered. It was answered the other day by Dmitry Medvedev, who was speaking to reporters. He was giving an interview to a bunch of reporters, and he actually answered this question. Now, Medvedev, he wasn't addressing Lindsey Graham's statement, but he was addressing the German justice minister who was saying something along the same lines as what Lindsey Graham was saying to Blinken, which is that what happens if Vladimir Putin travels to Germany? Lindsey Graham was asking, what about if Vladimir Putin travels to Europe? Can we arrest him? The Justice Minister of Germany, he issued a statement answering the question, what happens if Putin, with this arrest warrant, travels to Germany, and what will Germany do? And the German Justice Minister said that Putin would be arrested, and he would be delivered to The Hague. So Dmitry Medvedev, he answers this question from Lindsey Graham. He answers the hypothetical question / statement from the German Justice Minister. And here is what Dmitry Medvedev said, since we're going down this hypothetical road, this rabbit hole of can we arrest Putin if he enters the U.S., or can we arrest Putin if he enters Europe? Let's explore this hypothetical with Dmitry Medvedev. And here's what Medvedev said, and I quote, "Suddenly they made a decision about our head of state, issued an arrest warrant, and then some idiots, some half-wits, like the German Minister of Justice, say, well, if he comes, we'll arrest him. He's a lawyer, isn't he? Does he understand what this means? Let's imagine, of course, This is a situation that will never materialize, yes, but nevertheless, let's imagine that it has materialized. The current head of a nuclear weapon state came to Germany, for example, and was arrested. What is this? A declaration of war on the Russian Federation. And already in this case, all our resources, all our missiles will fly to the Bundestag, to the Chancellor's office, and so on. Does he realize that this is a casus belli, a declaration of war? Or did he not study well? So Medvedev, he replies to the German justice minister. He goes down this hypothetical path that the German justice minister took us down a couple of days ago, connected to the ICC arrest warrant of Russian President Vladimir Putin. But Medvedev also answers Lindsey Graham's question to Anthony Blinken. Arrest Putin. Hello, Iskander. That's pretty much what Medvedev is saying here. It is a declaration of war. You arrest a head of state, it is a declaration of war. Plain and simple. So, question answered, Lindsey Graham. Question answered, Anthony Blinken and German Justice Minister. Let's move on. Let's now talk about the Piers Morgan interview with maybe presidential candidate for the Republicans, Ron DeSantis. Now, Ron DeSantis, he took a lot of heat about a week ago when he answered a questionnaire that Tucker Carlson sent out to potential presidential Republican presidential candidates, asking them their thoughts on Ukraine and Putin and Russia and sanctions and all of these things. And DeSantis, he answered Tucker Carlson's questionnaire. He answered his questions by saying that the conflict in Ukraine is a territorial dispute. He said something like that. I'm not sure that's the exact reply from DeSantis, but he did use the word dispute. He said something like, this is a dispute or a territorial dispute, which the U.S. should not get involved in. And what the U.S. should be doing is they should be finding some sort of a ceasefire or working on some sort of peace plan between Russia and Ukraine. Now, this was actually a good response from DeSantis to Tucker Carlson's question. But this really, really angered the neocons and the globalist neoliberals. And so DeSantis gave an interview to Piers Morgan, and DeSantis had to walk back his reply to Tucker Carlson's questions from last week. And so Piers Morgan, who is not he's not fond of Russia or Putin, asked DeSantis his views on Vladimir Putin. And here is what DeSantis answered. He said, Putin is a war criminal. He then said, I think he's got grand ambitions. I think he's hostile to the United States. But I think the thing that we've seen is he doesn't have the conventional capability to realize his ambitions. And so he's basically a gas station with a bunch of nuclear weapons. And one of the things we could be doing better is utilizing our own energy resources in the United States. So in order to get back in favor with the neocons and the globalist neoliberals, DeSantis has to pull out quotes from John McCain. He had to use the gas station masquerading as a country's line. Very, very disappointing response from DeSantis. It shows that DeSantis has no understanding of Russia. It shows that DeSantis is not up to date as to what is happening, not only in the war in Ukraine, but he's clueless with the economic war of attrition and the effect of collective West sanctions on Russia. It means that DeSantis is unaware of the fact that Russia's economy withstood the economic sanctions, shock and awe sanctions that the collective West threw at Russia. And it's not the Russian economy that is now hurting, but it is the economies of the collective West that are now crumbling and are in recession. So DeSantis has shown that he's not very up to date on his views on foreign policy. He's not being advised correctly, or he is just ignorant as to how the Russian economy operates and where things stand, not only in the war in Ukraine, but in the economic war as well. So this was a very, very poor response from DeSantis, but it also shows me something else. It shows me that DeSantis, while he can stand up to woke ideology and big pharma and the lockdowns and stuff like that, he cannot stand up to the neocons and the globalist neoliberals and the war machine. When it comes to the war machine, DeSantis folds. That's what this response shows me, because last week he gave a good response to Tucker Carlson's questions on the war in Ukraine and Russia and how he would handle that crisis. And 1 week later, to Piers Morgan, he walks all of that back and he repeats tired, debunked, ridiculous talking points of the one-time chief neocon John McCain. And he repeats these talking points and these narratives because he feels like the pressure was too much for him to handle after the responses he gave last week, and he now has to find favor with the neocons and the neoliberals. He's looking for their approval. So DeSantis on foreign policy and on warmongering, for me, it shows that he can easily be influenced and swayed and bullied by the neocons and the globalist neoliberals. So that's my take on this Piers Morgan interview with DeSantis, which, from what I understand from the clips that have been released on Twitter that I've viewed, this was not a very good interview for DeSantis. He did not come off very well in this interview with Piers Morgan. And this reply from DeSantis, which is focused on foreign policy, shows me that he's got quite a ways to go so that he can formulate an independent foreign policy that puts America first and not neocons first. So that's Ron DeSantis. Let's now return to Dmitry Medvedev and another quote that Dmitry Medvedev had during this interview that he gave the other day, the same interview where he talked about Putin's ICC arrest warrant and what would happen if Germany or any country were to arrest the Russian president. Dmitry Medvedev also said this about European leaders. He said, and I quote, "We have recently witnessed a catastrophic decline in the competence and basic literacy of the leaders of the EU. I will not name individual names. You know them yourself. They are both men and women. If you ask me, I would never want to see their faces. Gotta hand it to Medvedev. He is, he's something else. He's something else. He does not want to name names, so he won't tell us who are these catastrophic, incompetent EU leaders who lack a basic literacy. He won't tell us the names of these leaders, but we can only imagine who he's talking about. Ursula van der Crazy, Annalena Baerbock, and Olaf Scholz, Jungle Joseph Borrell, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Anyway, that was the BITCHUTE Medvedev. A very interesting interview that he gave the other day. And now let's get to our main story before we get to our clown world. And this is a big story. It's a follow-up post from Seymour Hersh on Nord Stream. And like his first post on the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, this follow-up is also not getting much media attention. But it is quite an interesting post that Seymour Hersh put up yesterday on his Substack. The title of this post is "The Cover-Up." That is the title of this post. The Biden administration continues to conceal its responsibility for the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines. And in this follow-up post to his original Nord Stream pipeline sabotage report, Seymour Hersh claimed that U.S. and German intelligence agencies attempted to add to the blackout of his original Nord Stream pipeline reporting by feeding the New York Times and the German weekly Die Zeit false cover stories to counter the report that Biden and U.S. operatives were responsible for the pipeline's destruction. So Seymour Hersh, he claims that when Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, flew to D.C. to meet with Joe Biden a couple of weeks ago, and they had that very private, secretive meeting, an 80-minute meeting in the White House with no press conference, no media statements, none of that stuff. That the Biden White House they told Olaf Scholz that they would be working with the CIA, and the CIA would need to contact German intelligence so that they can create an alternative narrative to Seymour Hersh's Nord Stream pipeline sabotage reporting. And the purpose of creating this alternative narrative was so that they could effectively just squash Seymour Hersh's his revelation, his allegation that it was the Biden White House, with the help of Norway, that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And here is what Seymour Hersh says in this latest Substack post, and I will put a link to this article in the description box down below. But let me read you the final paragraph. There have been no statements or written understandings made by public since then by either government. I was told by someone with access to diplomatic intelligence that there was a discussion of the pipeline expose, and as a result, certain elements in the Central Intelligence Agency were asked to prepare a cover story in collaboration with German intelligence that would provide the American and German press with an alternative version for the destruction of Nord Stream 2. In other words, of the intelligence community, the agency was to pulse the system in an effort to discount the claim that Biden had ordered the pipeline's destruction. So the CIA, along with German intelligence, they got in touch with the New York Times and with Die Zeit, the German publication, and they told them that this is the narrative that we want you guys to push out. The New York Times pushed out the narrative that the Nord Stream pipeline was blown up by pro-Ukrainian / anti-Putin, pro-Russian white supremacists. That was the New York Times narrative that the CIA was telling them to run with, and German intelligence, they told German media to run with the story that this was 5 guys, 1 female doctor, and a yacht named the Andromeda that sunk, that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And all of this was done so that they can draw attention away from Seymour Hersh's his Nord Stream pipeline sabotage reporting. Because in this post from Seymour Hersh, he says that while the mainstream media was not picking up his reports, and they were just trying to memory hold the entire investigative reporting that he did on Nord Stream, there was a lot of alternative media, as well as a lot of EU and German officials and politicians and alt media that were picking up his story and were starting to talk about the claims that he made in his original Nord Stream pipeline sabotage reports. And so the Biden White House was feeling nervous about this, and they called Olaf Scholz over to the US. They called the CIA in. They then contacted German intelligence. Olaf Scholz was in the know of, he knew all of this. So he was now part of the inner circle, part of the cover-up. And they came up with pro-Ukrainian allies and 5 guys, a female doctor, and the yacht story. I will put a link to this down below in the description box so you can read it. It's not a very long Substack post, but it's a very important Substack post, and of course, none of the collective West mainstream media is picking up this story from award-winning journalist Seymour Hersh. Once again, the title is The Cover-Up. And so before I get to my clown world, here's my take on the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. I tend to agree with German intelligence and German media, which is that the pipeline was blown up using a yacht. I don't think it was the Andromeda yacht, and I don't think you had five guys and a female doctor who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. I think that what happened with the Nord Stream pipeline is that you had the SS Minnow, and then you had the people that were stranded on Gilligan's Island. They were recruited to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. And when you look at the people and their skill sets that were stranded on Gilligan's Island, you start to see that all of the pieces fall into place, because you have the yacht. It's not the Andromeda, but it's the SS Minnow. You have the skipper, who is a big, strong guy, who is someone that could easily carry a lot of explosives onto the SS Minnow. You have Gilligan, who, from what I remember, was an experienced diver. I think he was the one that could dive down and place those explosives to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. So you have the skipper, you have Gilligan, who was going to do the diving. You had the millionaire and his wife. They're the ones that bankrolled this entire operation. So you have the money. So you have the muscle, you have the diver, And now you have the money, the millionaire and his wife. So they're bankrolling this entire operation. You have the brains, the professor. You need someone who knows how many explosives, what's the strength of the explosives that are going to be needed to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. You need someone who understands math and physics. Where should we place the explosives? Where along the Baltic Sea do we need to dive down to place the explosives? What's the best spot? Someone that understands all of the dynamics, the science, the physics to blow up these pipelines. You have it in the professor. So you have the brawn, you have the diver, you have the money, you have the brains, you have Ginger, the actress. She was the person who was able to create the cover story. She has the Hollywood contacts, who I am positive would be able to find the fake passports. So you have Ginger. She was the one that would be able to create the story that all of these people would need, so that they can go and rent the yacht and give over the fake identifications and the fake passports and pretend to be something that they're not, as they're going to take this yacht to the Baltic to blow up a pipeline. So she was the person that would be able to create the entire cover story, because Ginger was the actress, and she was the person that was going to be able to provide the deception, the cover story and the deception. So you have the brawn and the muscle in the skipper, you have the diver in Gilligan, you have the money in the millionaire and his wife, you have the brains in the professor, and you have the deception and the actress, the cover story in Ginger. The only X factor in all of this, the only person that I can't figure out what role they played in all of this, is Mary Ann. I can't figure out Mary Ann's role. Let me know in the comments down below, what role did Mary Ann play in all of this? I can't figure that one out. That's my one loose end, is Mary Ann. But, when you look at the Gilligan Island crew, the cast, and you put all the pieces together, it's crystal clear that they're the ones that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. They had the know-how, they had the expertise, they had the money, they had the capability to complete this task. Anyway, let's get to my clown world. And in this clown world, we have to talk about James Vasquez. Now, James Vasquez, he was this soldier, this U.S. soldier who was fighting for the Ukraine military, and he was posting videos and tweets and reporting all of the happenings on the ground in Ukraine, as Vasquez was helping the Ukraine military fight the Russians. And Vasquez, he got quite a lot of money from donations as he was reporting everything that was going on in Ukraine, because he was allegedly, as he was telling us, he was there on the ground fighting alongside the Ukraine military, and he was blowing up tanks and fighting the Russian forces. And now it has been shown it was a fiction. All the slick videos that he was producing, all of the reports that he was giving us from being on the ground in Ukraine, fighting alongside the Ukraine military, was a complete fiction. He has disappeared from Twitter. He has erased his accounts from Twitter. And that's James Vasquez. He has now vanished. And there was one person that was on to James Vasquez's con from the very beginning. one person that saw the videos that he was putting out, where he claimed to have destroyed 7 tanks in one day, a claim, by the way, that even Newsweek picked up and reported on. Newsweek actually cited James Vasquez as a U.S. soldier who, alongside Ukrainian soldiers, have destroyed 7 Russian tanks in one day. That was Newsweek. But there was one person that saw James Vasquez's videos and said, this is a hoax. This person saw through James Vasquez and his videos and his reporting over a year ago. And he called him out, and he even did a video. And that person was none other than Gonzalo Lira. Gonzalo Lira was the person that figured out James Vasquez from the very get-go, from the very beginning. So Gonzalo Lira deserves all the credit on this one. He figured out James Vasquez a long, long time ago, and now James Vasquez has been outed. So this is what Gonzalo Lira tweeted. I told you all over a year ago that James Vasquez was a lying grifter and paid propagandist working for the Kiev regime and Washington warmongers. I even did a video proving it by comparing videos he had shot. And there's a link to Gonzalo Lira's video. I'll put a link to his video down below. Glad to see it's come out. That's the clown world, everybody. Gonzalo had this figured out from the very beginning. It took 1 year, but you know what? Eventually the truth came out, and eventually the truth always comes out. So hats off to Gonzalo. Well done. Well done, Gonzalo. You have been vindicated. And everyone else is picking up this story. I saw that Jack Posobiec, he picked up this story on the lying grifter that is James Vasquez, and he's tweeting out all the information on James Vasquez's grift. So I'll put a link to some of Jack Posobiec's tweets as well. But that's the clown world. Another Snake Island, Ghost of Kiev story. James Vasquez destroying 7 tanks in one day. A story that was even picked up and reported by Newsweek. Anyway, that's the video, everyone. TheDuran.locals.com. The Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.